wabarakatuh. Assalamualaikum, everyone. So I just have one quick thing to show you guys before I introduce our next speaker. So this actually happened today from 4 to 5:30. There was a special Ramadan talk in collaboration with Muslim Legacy, and it was revolving around the history of Islam. So the event already did happen, but the recording is available on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the chat for you guys, so you can go ahead and check it on there. I did have a little video for you guys, but I am mindful of time, and I don't want to take up too much time from Sister Kulsoom, so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce her. But please, like Brother Arqam was just saying, donate if you can. Try to make the most of the last few days of Ramadan, inshallah. So just to introduce Sister Kulsoom, she's a certified life coach, counselor, motivational speaker, and author. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from York University. She also serves as the women's chaplain at University of Toronto in Mississauga. She's also 2 courses away from completing her associate's degree in Islamic sciences from Mishka University. She's an instructor at I3 Institute and inspires to spread the message of Islam with the various projects she's involved with. She deeply understands the pain, heartbreak, and confusion many people, women in particular, struggle with, and is passionate about helping women in their journey of healing and growing so they too can make a difference in this world and accomplish all that they hope to accomplish. So I'm really happy to be introducing you today, and you can go ahead and take the floor, Sister Kulsoom. You're muted.
All right, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So before we get started, I don't mind if you show the video. Did you want to quickly show it, or should we just move on?
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, inshallah. All right, okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri, wa hal uqdam min lisani yafqahu qawli. So jazakallah khair for that introduction, Sister Marwa, and jazakallah khair everyone who's attending. Now, the way that I do like to do the talks is I like to make it very interactive. And I know that this is a name that we may have probably heard. So I don't really want us to focus on the name per se. There are a lot of, background that we want to know about this person. And there's a lot of, different things that we want to know. But I really want us to focus on the lessons that we can take away from this Sahabiyat and how we can implement them into our life. And if I can help you or myself in any way to do that, then, that's kind of what I'm here for today. So if you have any questions or anything at all, just kind of type it in the chat box. I'm looking at the chat box as we speak, so I'll try to monitor the chat, inshallah. All right, so let's begin. So, I'm not sure if you mentioned in the introduction, but the Sahabiyat that I'm doing today is Sumayyah bint Khabbāṭ. And, her last name, there's a different way of pronouncing it, I guess. It also goes by Sumayyah bint Khabbāṭ. So, both of them are okay. And before we even get to, who she is, what the background is, why it's important to learn about her, I think it's really important to point out that it's, I was attending an event recently. And at the event, when I asked them, do you know some women in the past? Do you know some Sahabiyat? Who can we take examples from? And believe it or not, people maybe only mentioned one person. And I was shocked, right? I was shocked because, these are women of steel. These are women that you want to know, you want to embody, you want to learn from them, you want to implicate them. And so when we don't recognize these names, when we don't teach these names to our children, we are living a very, very sad life because, they've had the same struggles that we've had, if not even worse. And, they've done amazing in the roles that they were given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, I just found out, I realized that this wasn't catered towards women. There's actually brothers here as well today. So usually the talks that I do are for sisters, but it's even better that we have this talk for brothers and sisters today, because the tips that we're going to learn today, I think, are very important for us to implement. Okay, so a little bit of background about Sumayyah. So she's of Ethiopian descent. So, all my Black brothers and all my Black sisters, this one's for you. Alhamdulillah, we have representation. She was one of the first 7 converts to Islam. So for all my convert brothers and sisters, again, this one's for you, right? This is really a woman of steel. She converted alongside Yasser and her husband, who was her husband, and her son Ammar. And I don't know if you guys have seen, maybe you guys can share in the chat box, how many of you have seen Omar series? Has anyone watched Omar series on YouTube? I think it's not on YouTube anymore. It's on another external channel. Okay, yes. So I'm getting some yeses. It's an incredible show. Don't waste your time on Netflix when you can be watching shows like this, right? So when you watch that show, you'll kind of get to understand who Sumayyah was and who her son was and the times that they were living in. The times, so we call it the Meccan period, the time that they were living in were very, very tough. Okay, and some would say that we're even reliving those times, maybe even worse. Okay, at that time, you know, when you see the Omar series, when you learn about the Sirah, when you learn about all the stories, they were living in some very tough times. They're facing a lot of hostility. And at that time, Islam had just started to come out. So the Prophet ﷺ had just started to, you know, come out with the message of Islam. And initially when he, you know, people find out that he was Muslim and people started accepting Islam, there was a lot of hostility that was faced by, you know, from the elites to all the early, you know, acceptors of Islam. And so she was a slave who was considered much, you know, of the lower descent. And so, you know, probably her being a slave was one of the reasons that she was targeted a lot. Her family was targeted a lot. You could say that she was a very easy target, right? So that's just a little bit of background from her. And so here is some of the torture that she faced, right? So there was active persecution. No, you know, the brother made dua for Palestine, for Palestine. And absolutely the stuff that we're facing in Palestine right now, the stuff that our Uyghur brothers and sisters are facing. And, you know, all over the world, it's a lot of torture. It's a lot of persecution. Why? Just because you're a Muslim. So can you imagine just going on the street and being targeted just because you're a Muslim? That's what they were facing, but they weren't facing just, you know, verbal abuse. They were facing physical abuse. They were facing, you know, mental torture. And that's kind of how, you know, Samaya, may Allah have mercy upon her, may Allah accept from her, may Allah reunite us with her. That's how she became a shaheed eventually. But before we get to that, due to the social disadvantage that she had, right, you could say they were very vulnerable to that persecution because at that time, the Quraysh were the elite. Okay, so because they didn't accept Islam, they walked around feeling very arrogant, very proud of who they are and their forefathers and not accepting the message of Islam. So they were very keen on torturing these slaves, you know, torturing the less fortunate, whoever they were able to kind of get their hands on, especially if you were a slave. And so Abu Jahl, he tortured them in many different ways. Okay, you know, withdrawing their food, locking them up, physical torture as in beating them. And, you know, no one was really able to help them. You know, Abu Bakr would pass, Bilal, who was another slave at that time, he was freed eventually. But, you know, he wasn't able to do anything because they were already free. So if you're a slave, you can buy, you know, you can pay money and you can take the slave and that's fine. But if you're already free, there's not much that they could do at that point because Islam was just flourishing. Islam was just coming out. They didn't have a big army. They didn't have a lot of, you know, support. So, you know, people would pass by, they would see the torture, but nothing could be done. They would see her husband Yasser being beat. They would see, you know, her son Ammar being beat, but they couldn't do anything. The Prophet ﷺ would pass by and all he could say to them was, patience, O family of Yasser, for you are destined for paradise. And, you know, one could say that it was this message from the Prophet ﷺ, this kind of dua that he made that kind of gave them hope to continue. And we're going to talk about some of the lessons, which I think are very important for us to implement. I have a daughter at home. And when I think about who I want her to become, her name is Hidayah, but I want her to become a Sumayyah, right? Her name is Hidayah, but I want her to become a Khadija. I want her to become a Aisha. Right? We want our daughters to become that and much more for the sake of Islam. So we're going to talk about the lessons, inshallah. So, you know, one of the mental ways that Abu Jahl was torturing them and torturing her, because we want to talk about her specifically, was he continuously was asking her to renounce her faith. Okay, he was saying, listen, all you have to do is just say that I am, you know, equal to God, or, you know, there is no, there is not one God, there's many gods, you know, just kind of renounce the faith of Islam. So verbally, it seems very simple. All you have to do is just utter it and you're fine. But the more he asked her to renounce it, the more she detested. The more he asked her to, you know, just say it, the more she would say, no, I don't want to, until she spit on him. And, you know, eventually she was murdered by a spear that was put through her private parts. And I know it's a very, I'm not going to say inappropriate. It's very open, right? And I'm being very open about it as well. I'm not sure of the age of the audience today. But guys, this is our sister in Islam. This is how she was tortured. Okay, until she died, and her husband there after he died as well. And imagine you having to see your wife. How many people here are married? I'm married, but forget if you're not married, doesn't matter. Imagine if you saw your mom going through that, your sister going through that, your daughter. And guys, this is what is happening to our brothers and sisters right now as we're speaking. Okay, so this isn't something, oh yeah, this is just a story. It's so sad, and may Allah have mercy upon her. No, this is happening right now, and it could happen to you. And just recently, actually, in Scarborough, I don't know how many of you guys are from the GTA, but in Scarborough, 5 people were targeted, and I'm not sure of the entire story, but I'm pretty sure it's because of their, religion. It's not uncommon. So if there's another story, khair, but it's not uncommon. It happens a lot, even here in Canada. So, eventually she passed away, and she was a shaheed. She was the first woman shaheed in Islam. And that's something to feel very honored by. So when people don't know this name, when people don't understand the, intensity of the trials that the sister bore, it's a very sad situation. And so I have some lessons that we can kind of take from her story. But how's everyone doing so far? Yeah, so Sister Essa said, mashallah, Jannah is better than all that in the world. Absolutely. How's everyone feeling? Does anyone feel emotional? Is it hitting home for anyone? Because really, it could be you. And if it's not hitting home for you, that this Ramadan can be a check for you to see where your heart is at. Because if you are not feeling the pain of your brothers and sisters, there's something wrong. There's something very, very wrong. Okay, so when I tell you that an Aisha in China had someone torture her and rape her, you should feel that pain. Okay, so here are some lessons that we can all take, because I do want to keep it very, very practical. So the first lesson that we learned from her story is she didn't abandon her deen when times got tough. How easy is it for her to just utter what Abu Jahl is asking her? How easy is it to take off your hijab when someone is, abusing you because of the hijab? It's very easy. You could take off your hijab right now and toss it in the trash and walk out and then khalas, right? But she didn't do that. The more that she was asked to renounce her faith, the more she pushed back. She even spat on his face. How many of sisters now would do that? Okay, so she didn't abandon her deen. And, think about it, a lot of people compromise their deen these days. A lot of people, they go from Muhammad to Mo because they don't want to be known Muslim. They go from, I don't know, give me another one. They go from Maryam to Mary. They go from, Samir to Sam. So people are compromising their deen right, left, and center. So in a world of people compromising their deen, you be the one to stand out, just like Sumayyah did. So she didn't abandon her deen just because, she was being tortured and she was being abused and all of that. That's the first thing. I want you to reflect personally on how, you compromise your deen. Would you abandon it? Would you feel scared? Would you be actually someone who stands up for someone like that? That's another point that I didn't even have in my notes today, but I just thought of it. Is if this was happening to someone else in front of you, would you be someone to stand up for her, or would you just be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and just, it'd be a story that you tell your friends and family? So, again, in the word, Ramadan kind of gets your energy a little down sometimes, but I can't think of the word right now, but how many of you would just sit there and watch, stand there and watch? So don't be like that. Don't be someone who just stands and watches the torture. Be someone who stands up for your sister, even if you have to die. And as I said, would rather die than abandon my deen of Islam. Absolutely. And that's the kind of, courage that we should have. Okay, so that's the first lesson. The second lesson is she was so focused on the promise of paradise to push forward the torture. Someone said that Jannah is definitely better. Absolutely, it's better. right? And sometimes we forget. When times get tough, which they will, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to test you. He's going to test you with loss of wealth, loss of health, loss of everything. And so when that happens, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, why me, poor me? Why is this happening to me? Or are you going to say, you know what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised me Jannah. So khalas, if I'm promised Jannah for all the pain that I'm going through, then, what better than Jannah? And we forget that sometimes. We forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that after hardship, there's going to be ease. Even with hardship, there is ease. Okay, there is like a difference of opinion on that. So we forget that, and she didn't think, oh, why can't he save me? Why can't you do this? All she heard was him, the Prophet ﷺ promising them Jannah for what she's going through, and that she clung on to that, and she used that as hope to move forward. So sometimes I hear a lot of, but this is happening in the community and this is happening in the world and it's so sad and I don't, but if you have hope, you can go through even the toughest of times. That's the hope that you need. And she had that hope. And number 3, again, so she didn't compromise her deen. Okay, she didn't compromise for even 1 second. And, there is this idea that if you are being tortured and you're being abused like that if you don't believe it in your heart, you can utter it, right? But for sure, that's, lower of having faith. Okay, so I just want to make that very clear. It's for sure lower. Someone who can still withhold that and withstand that torture and still stand upon the truth, for sure, they're far better. Okay, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very merciful. He understands the severity of certain situations as long as you don't believe it in your heart. But don't compromise your deen. If you have to be the one to pray when you go to a mall and everyone's watching you, do it. So my sisters, you guys are wearing hijab. We're all wearing hijab out there. And if you're the only hijabi and, naked woman, then alhamdulillah. Don't compromise just because you want to fit in and be a people pleaser. Okay, and that's another thing that we learn from the life of Samaya. And the 4th is the role model for a woman. Okay, in an era, and look, I have a daughter, right? So I always wanted a daughter. My husband, he loves his daughter too. But subhanAllah, when I think about having a daughter, I think of the amana. I think of, that burden on the shoulders that we have. It's not a burden. But when I think about how we have to raise her in this society that's becoming like influencers, all these hijabistas and all these people taking off their hijab and beautifying the hijab in a way that's, against Islam. In a world of that, use these as your role models. Be beautiful, but be beautiful because of your taqwa. Okay, be beautiful, but be beautiful because of your courage. And trust me, when you embody these characteristics, for all my sisters who are not married, you're actually going to attract a similar brother as well. If you start compromising your deen, you're also going to end up with a brother that compromises his deen. Just, some marriage tips. I know this isn't a marriage halaqah, but, people always have marriage tips. So just a little 1-2 for my sisters. Have these characteristics. And look, I get it. It's tough. It's challenging. It's super hard. I'm not saying that it's easy, but this is why we want to use sisterhood to build that, build that courage together. You want to realize if you're having a tough time and someone abused you, tell us, tell your sisters, tell your brothers in Islam how we can support you. And this is a message to my brothers. Brothers, we need to protect and support our sisters. Don't intimidate them, but make them feel protected. And sisters, get some self-defense workshops, work together so you don't have to ever be in a compromising position. Okay, so those are the 4 tips that I took from her story. And I want to end off with the ayah from Surah Baqarah. And I'll read the translation because, a lot of us don't understand the Arabic. But, I just want us to ponder upon the translation. And it's ayah 214, so you guys can follow along. Or do you think that you will enter paradise while such trial has not yet come to you, as came to those who passed on before you? They were touched by poverty and hardship and were shaken until even their messenger and those who believed with him said, when is the help of Allah? Unquestionably, the help of Allah is near. So, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel like, what is happening to me? You know, when we think about Maryam radiallahu anha, subhanallah, she was going through so much labor pain. And you know, if you've gone through labor pain, it's really intense. It's super, super intense, guys. You know, at that time, she felt like giving up. So that feeling is very natural. But what do you do in that feeling? That's your aqidah. Do you turn to Allah or do you turn to like Kim Kardashian? You know, do you turn to the stories of the Sahabiyat? Or do you turn on like, I don't know what's out there right now, like TikTok or something, okay? So think about how you can utilize these tips, incorporate them in your life, how you can become better for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how you can raise better future generation, how we can all work together and embody these characteristics. And I know you guys didn't play the video, but this is the kind of characteristics that we want to embody in our youth. And if we want to embody those characteristics in our youth, we want to have programs for the youth. If we want to have programs for the youth, we want to have a place. And so this is the place. We have our hub. We need you. We need your help. Every little bit counts. Every dollar counts. Every $10 counts. And remember, when you spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is only going to increase you. So don't be stingy. And you know, if you're working, start incorporating part of your wealth to sadaqah. And this is the best sadaqah that you can do for your children, right? Tomorrow, don't cry if your children start taking off their hijab and don't fast the month of Ramadan. It's upon you, it's on your shoulders for them to, you know, love Sumayyah, love Maryam, love the Abdullahs, love all these, you know, Sahabas and Sahabiyat from the past, inshallah. So I have a few minutes. I can take some basic questions about the talk today or any comments, and then, you know, we'll end off, inshallah. How's everyone doing today? Any comments, any questions, any way that I can help you?
I think one thing that just came to me when you were just talking, like when you brought up the ayah, how much it relates to Sumayyah's story, subhanAllah, like it was just such a beautiful connection. So I just really love that.
Yeah, subhanAllah. But the Quran speaks to you. I was just in the halaqah and, you know, the sister was telling us how the Prophet ﷺ, and I don't remember the connotation she used, but basically saying that the Prophet ﷺ was a walking, talking Quran, meaning everything that he did was according to the Quran. So how can you become like that? You know, are you sitting the way that the Prophet ﷺ was sitting? Are you wearing hijab the way that the Sahabiyat were wearing it? Are you talking in the same way? Are you cleaning your teeth in the same way? You know, some of these things we take as very little, but really it's for our betterment, and it's to imitate the people that are amongst the best of mankind. So alhamdulillah, I don't think anyone has any questions. You know, this talk isn't one that really has questions. I think it's more one that people reflect on. Actually, hold on, I take that back. There's a question. So Sister Lisa said, what would your recommendations be for Muslims who feel like they're at a point of no return or struggling with their Muslim identity? Well, that's a faith crisis. Okay, you're having a faith crisis, you're having an identity crisis. I would say definitely speak to a sheikh, definitely speak to someone more knowledgeable so they can help you get back on the deen, right? First, get your connection with Allah, get your conviction on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, get your, you know, your understanding of his attributes. And then when you're able to do that, I need you to surround yourself by better people. Because when you're surrounded by negativity, whether it's from your family, because let's be honest, a lot of times it is from our family. We're practicing, but our families may not be practicing, right? And so when we have that negativity from our family, it can impact us. So surround yourself by, I'm not saying change your family, but try to surround yourself by, you know, better females or better males, brothers or sisters, and that will help you a lot as well, inshallah. But, you know, if your case is more personal, then I would say you message me privately so that I can help you privately. Someone said, love Prophet Muhammad SAW more than entire mankind. Perfect. Someone messaged me privately. This is so off topic, but you look so familiar. Do you live in Scarborough? No, sister, I don't live in Scarborough. I live in Brampton, Peel, but I do a lot of talks around the GTA. So maybe you've seen me at one of the talks or something. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe I have like a duplicate walking around in Scarborough. I don't know. Rida said we have to incorporate small habits from the Sahabas and the Prophet's life in our daily routine. Absolutely. So I will end off there. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you everybody for attending. Remember, there are still events ongoing throughout the rest of the month. So please, come join in. If you guys don't have the link to get updates on all of the events, I put it in the chat so you can sign up for that and you should get all the events for the rest of the month. But other than that, please donate, make the most of the last 10 days of Ramadan. Well, we still have more than 10 days, but yes, and everybody go enjoy your iftar, go get ready, and Assalamu alaikum.